Welcome back to the Verified Athletics Podcast. We just officially released the College Selector, so it is now available on student athletes' profiles. So if you're an athlete and you don't have a profile, make sure that you get one. But if you do already have a profile, log in and you can access the College Selector tab. From there, you can fill out a bunch of information. It takes about 5 minutes, and we will follow up with an email that lists the schools that we think that you should reach out to, why we think that they're good fits for you, where they may or may not. It really can help you in the recruiting process. This is something that you would pay a consultant maybe $1,000 to have them help you to do. But for this, you get it all for free, and really it just takes about 5 minutes of your time. So you should definitely do it. At the very least, it's definitely fun to see what schools come up for you. So check out the College Selector at verifiedathletics.com. Today is also the first day that we're recording in the new studio, so it might sound a little different. It might take us a couple episodes to fine tune it and make it perfect. Today's guest is Vad Lee. Vad is a current FCA chaplain at the University of Indiana. Before that, he had a great career as a college quarterback, was probably the best player in FCS football for a couple of years, but before that was the starting quarterback at Georgia Tech. He was one of the top recruited athletes in the country. The year he was coming out of high school, was choosing between a whole bunch of schools, and he's focused on helping athletes become better versions of themselves. So I think he's got a lot of insight for everyone that would listen to this podcast, and he's got a great story. So I hope you all enjoy it. All right, we got Vad Lee here. What's going on, Vad?
How you doing, Nate? Good to be here.
Yeah, man. Well, why don't you tell me what's going on in your life these days?
So with me, my name is Vad Lee. I'm 26 years old. Have a beautiful wife and two little daughters. One just turned 2 and yesterday, and a 3-month-old. And learning how to be a dad, learning how to become one as a husband with my wife, and also served. I just finished serving as a team chaplain at Indiana University, where I was involved in a lot of young men's lives, where it's important to me to build up the community and build up the youth through spiritual faith, physical faith. Spiritually, physically, and mentally. That's what I've been kind of up to. Also, I've been able to play a little professional football and still in the mix of professional football as well. So staying in shape, continue to learn every day, and yeah, that's me.
Well, great. So you must be about 5 years out of college now, right? And 4 years maybe.
Yeah, so I graduated December 2015. So yeah, so December 2000, this 2019 will be 4 complete years. Man, that's crazy.
Well, it keeps counting up on you. It doesn't go. It doesn't go down from here.
Yeah, yeah, I know it. I know it. I've heard.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about your recruiting experience, your college experience. What was your big takeaway from college football?
My biggest takeaway from college football, man, that's a good question. I would say that the biggest transition from college to high school is that you're not as good as you think you are. I say that humbly because coming out of high school, I was the #1 ranked player in the state of North Carolina. And I was ESPN Top 100 and just had all of these cool accolades. But then when I got to college, I realized that now there were 18, 20, 30 other guys that were #1 players in the state at one point in time that were ranked in the top 150 in the nation. And I wasn't the only guy. In high school, that's very celebrated because you might be the only one on your team like that, or you might not have those accolades at all. But one of the things that I realized in college is that you are a product of the work that you put in, and the measure you put in is the measure you'll get out. So, I learned that in college. Had a great, awesome opportunity to go to Georgia Tech and Madison University, 2 different universities. So I got to see the skill level, and I got to play on 2 different levels. But at the end of the day, football is football, and it's the game that we love. I've learned some cool lessons along the way.
Well, I imagine a lot of athletes like they really want to be in the position that you were in as a high school player. What is that position like, to be number one in the state and to be recruited by a bunch of different schools? What was that experience like?
It was a unique experience. It was one of those things that I've always dreamed of. Never really dreamed of accolades in terms of, hey, I want to be the number one player in the state, but you dream of being noticed, I guess. And I think every athlete, no matter where they rank or no matter what their stats are, they want to be noticed. And we all want to be noticed at the end of the day. And whether that's by high school coaches, whether that's by our parents being accepted in the community, in the newspaper, or college coaches. We all want to be noticed. And for me, that was a cool, unique opportunity that, hey, I was just noticed. And my skill sets were on display so that everybody could notice them, so that I could potentially have an opportunity to go to college and earn my degree, and it also maybe have an opportunity to play professional. So it was one of those things that just, was by the grace of God. And, it certainly doesn't mean that, that I was the best player ever or anything, but it certainly was a lot of hard work and dedication that went into that becoming my story.
When did you get noticed? Was it your freshman year? Was it before your freshman year? Was it your sophomore, junior year? Like, when did you pop on like the radar and college programs around the country knew who you were?
So I popped on the radar after my sophomore year in high school. I was a starting receiver, and I had 1,100 yards receiving. And as a sophomore, people considered me as a baby, and they like, man, if you can do this as a sophomore, imagine what it would be like when you become a senior. And I would just want to encourage you guys that also came after a year of me not playing football at all. I was injured. I got injured the first game of my JV. My high school varsity coach said, "Hey, you're going to play one game of JV. We want to get your feet wet. We want you to get introduced to high school ball, and then we're going to move you up after that." And I played one game, probably I think it was still in the first quarter, maybe the second, but most likely it was the first. If my mind is correct. And I got injured, and I was out for the entire season. And then to come the next year, I was very hungry. I was hungry to be on the field. I was hungry to have success. I was hungry to prove myself. I came to high school with a lot of hype, but now I'm injured. I was very hungry for the opportunity. And I would just encourage, for everybody that's listening, don't wait until something is taken away from you to value it or appreciate it. Not saying that I didn't appreciate it. I love the game. But a lot of times we get complacent, and we think that there's always tomorrow. Well, how about we go for today and give it everything we got? So for me, that happened my sophomore year, and I had a lot of success my sophomore year.
Well, yeah, there's definitely something about struggle or about difficulty that brings something out of people that they don't know that they have. It's like you get some sort of strength by going through difficult things. I mean, that's not a surprise, right? You go to the weight room, you do something difficult, you get literal strength out of it. But you go through mental challenges and you get mental strength, and those things power you. And I think the trick is how can you get the most out of what your experiences are? So if you've gone through something difficult or challenging, how do you get the most out of it and grow the most? And if you haven't had that kind of setback, how do you have the mentality that you did and you'd overcome even if you haven't had to do that yet, right? That's the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up the weight room. If we think about our muscles when we're in the weight room, we're literally breaking down our muscles just so that they can get built back up, So we're gonna go through things, and football is the ultimate sport where it challenges you mentally, physically, emotionally. It challenges your pride, your humility, your sacrifice. There's so many lessons that can be learned through this game that I love, that is teaching our young people.
Yeah. And so when you get through your sophomore year, you have a big season as a wide receiver. What was like the reaction from college coaches, and how did like that attention compare to what you expected?
Yeah. I think that, um, after my sophomore year, I received my first scholarship offer from Duke University. And once you receive, attention, or once you receive a scholarship, you can almost expect that somebody else is going to offer. Everybody's just waiting for that one person to pull the trigger, and that was unique. I've kept all of my letters that was ever sent to me. I definitely enjoyed the process. It is also one thing that I expected, though. I didn't walk in saying, "Hey," I didn't walk into high school and say, "Hey, I know that I'm gonna go on scholarship." But it was more, "Hey, I know that I have to do this to prepare for my future." I didn't grow I didn't come from the wealthiest family, or I wasn't the smartest, always the smartest guy in the room. So I knew that I could leverage this platform as an athlete to get to where I want to become in the future. One thing about the game and one thing about sports, that it has so many opportunities outside of the field. There's a coach, there's the video guy, there's the manager, there's the trainer, there's the I don't know. There's just so many. There's so many. There's the chaplain, like I've been serving. There's so many opportunities outside of the field that I knew that my heart thirsts for and I desired one day. So for me, I knew that I had to do whatever I had to do to continue to get better. My parents challenged me to get better. My coaches challenged me to get better, and I'm a product of good coaching and good mentors in my life, where I knew exactly what I wanted to do and from my high school career. And once that attention came from the scholarships, for me, it was about trying to find the best fit and trying to find, a great fit for me. And I remember I committed to Georgia Tech before my senior year because I enjoyed the process for 2 years at that point, where I wanted to end the process because I really wanted to focus on my last year in high school. I wanted to focus on my teammates. I wanted to focus on my coaches. I wanted to focus on winning a state championship. I wanted to focus not on me, but everybody around me. And I'm so glad that I made that decision before my senior year.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so you were getting recruited by, you said Duke, and you said that you weren't the smartest guy, but you must have been taking care of yourself in the classroom and doing the right things if you're getting recruited by Duke and Georgia Tech, and I don't know who else. But so I wouldn't leave our audience with the impression that you weren't taking care of things, academically.
Yeah, well, I
But
definitely knew that I had to take care of my academics. I would say that football motivated me to be a better student. Sometimes you can kind of get lackadaisical or, kind of slack a little bit, but I definitely wasn't a slacker. Football was kind of the driving force behind why I wanted to do certain things. So I'm thankful for the game. The game has helped me to become a better person overall.
And so you said the first offer came from Duke. By the time you were making your decision, who'd you have offers from, and who were like the front runners for the final decision?
Yeah, I ended up having over 20 offers, and Duke was my very first offer. So they always hold a special place in my heart. But it came down to Duke, NC State, Georgia Tech, and I think those were the top three that I was mostly considering. My recruiting was very unique because I played receiver my sophomore year. And the reason why I played receiver is because we had a senior quarterback he was more experienced, he was better. He was the starting quarterback. So I actually was the backup quarterback, but I was athletic enough to kind of do both. And I knew that I wanted to play quarterback for the rest of my career. And so a lot of my first offers came as a receiver, which was different from what I expected. I expected people to come to me as quarterback. So I had like University of South Carolina, Clemson, and just Georgia, all these different schools recruited me as a receiver. And I didn't want any parts of it. And they didn't want any parts of me once I told them that I was going to be a top quarterback. I ended up proving to them that that's who I was. But at the time, all they saw was, man, this is a sophomore receiver. Imagine when he becomes a senior, what he can be. So, but I knew that I was a quarterback.
So your junior year, you switched to playing quarterback. Were you worried at all that like offers that you had would no longer be there, or you might not be as good as you thought you were going to be, and that maybe that was a mistake, and you should just stay at wide receiver?
No, not at all. Wide receiver for me was more of an experiment. It was never something that I um, foreseen myself doing. Me and my coach, Antonio King, we had a plan from the very beginning, and we wanted to expose me to high school football since I didn't play, or I just barely played the year before and didn't get any reps there. So he was like, "Hey man, let's put you at receiver, and you're still the backup quarterback." Actually, in practice, I never really practiced at receiver until it was scrimmage time. I always did individual drills as a quarterback, and I just kept getting better as a quarterback. So I knew that some schools wouldn't go for it. I knew that some schools would say, "Hey man, you're a receiver," and that played a lot into my decision and why I went to Georgia Tech. And yeah, that it wasn't a worry for me though, because I knew that I would take care of business on the field at the end of the day.
And so you said you were the three finalists were Duke, Georgia Tech, and NC State, I think you said. And so how did you end up choosing Georgia Tech? Like what were the things about it that pushed you over the edge, if that was the place for you?
Yeah, I fell in love with Atlanta, Georgia. I thought that was very unique that Georgia Tech campus sit right in the middle of Atlanta, which at that point I've never really been outside of Durham, North Carolina, and I loved that. I did want to get away from home. It was 6 hours. It was 6 hours, so it wasn't too far. 6 hour drive wasn't too far. An hour flight. So I'm like, hey, I can get home anytime I need to. Um, Also, they just recruited me really hard, and they recruited me and let me know that, hey, you're our number one guy, and we need you. Also, they were competing at the time in the ACC championships all the time, and I knew that we could really do something special at Georgia Tech. One of the things that I encourage all players in high school is to make sure you're making the best, do your homework and make sure you're making the best decision for you. I think in recruiting, sometimes we can get caught up into the hype of a place like Atlanta, or we can get caught up in location and just all different stuff, other stuff that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it comes down to performance on the field. It comes down to coaches sticking to their word. It comes down to playing football that you love. So one of the things that in recruiting, I feel like for me was very interesting. A lot of people wouldn't have. A lot of people encouraged me not to go to Georgia Tech simply because they run a triple option scheme, and I wasn't a triple option quarterback. It was funny enough. I was told that I would be able to change the offense with my skill sets, and that turned out to be false. But I don't regret my decision. I think that it was the best decision for me. I think that there were some, looking back now, I think that there were some insecurities from me about my play as quarterback, simply because a lot of offers got dropped because people were saying you're a receiver instead of quarterback. And all I knew is that Georgia Tech was saying that I was their number one quarterback. And that's all I really cared about, was somebody that came to me and said, hey, you're our guy. We want you at quarterback in no other position. And once I received that security from Georgia Tech, I realized that, hey, this is where I want to be. And, I felt very comfortable with that decision. Now, I ended up transferring from Georgia Tech and went to James Madison University simply because the scheme had fit me better. So that's why I encourage a lot of athletes, hey, go to a place where you know that they're going to utilize your talents and skills, and that you're going to be happy with at the end of the day. For me, that took me 2 to 3 years to fully understand that. And when I did understand it, I made the best decision of my life by transferring to James Madison, where at Georgia Tech I was throwing the ball 8 times, 7 times a game. At James Madison, I was throwing the ball 37, 38 times a game. So that was more for me.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about your career at Georgia Tech. I don't really remember the details of it. Like when did you play, or how much did you get into games? You were there for, you said, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so I redshirted in 2011. I was the number one recruit, and just had a lot of hype coming in. And so 2012, we had a senior quarterback, and me and him had split time. I was a redshirt freshman in 2012, and we split time and had a lot of success during that time that we split, got a lot of experiences, and won some games for us. And it was just really exciting. The coach actually put some packages in for me to be able to throw the ball a little bit more. And it was just really exciting how they utilized me. We went to shotgun and things like that. And then in 2013, I became the starting quarterback, and had a decent career. I think we went 7-6 that year. Got to go to a bowl game, and you know, I will definitely have memories in my Georgia Tech career of beating the USC, the Trojans. You know, that's a school that I grew up like, man, USC, Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart, and so we beat USC, and those were fine memories. And you know, being a part of some key upset victories, and yeah, I definitely enjoyed my time at Georgia Tech, but it was rough because I didn't feel like that all of my skill sets were being utilized to the best of my ability, to the best of ability.
So what was the thing that turned it into time where you realized it was time for you to transfer? And then I guess coupled with that, um, how much of it felt like it was just your decision that it just wasn't for you, and how much of it felt like the coaches were telling you that it was time to move on?
Yeah. So I knew that I actually knew after stepping on campus for about 3 months and going through my first camp where we didn't throw the ball at all in practice. I'm saying, oh boy, this is not good.
But like
You know,
you're saying that like as if you'd never watched a Georgia Tech game before. Like what are you talking about? Like they didn't throw the ball probably at all for the last couple of years before
you're
that.
right, but you're right. But when you're told that we just never had the personnel, or we never had a quarterback that could throw like you can, you think that you're different. You think that that okay, yeah, maybe they haven't had that guy. I'm that guy, so I want to go in and change. I remember um, at Georgia Tech. Funny story. We would play Georgia State in 7-on-7 in the summers with no coaches, because coaches can't be out there in the summers in college. So no coaches were there. It was just kind of player led, and Georgia State would bring their players over, and we would go over to their facility. And the first, I think it was the second day that I was on campus, we had this big 7-on-7 versus Georgia State. Well, we were losing. Georgia Tech was losing to Georgia State. That shouldn't be the case, but it was a 7-on-7 passing league, so the talent was probably evened out. But either way, we shouldn't have been losing. And I remember I only been on campus for 2 days, and the players decided to put me in, and I didn't know the plays. They kind of said, "Hey," they was drawing in the dirt. "Hey, he's gonna run this. He's gonna run that. Hey, just find him." And I think it was 3 plays. We started 40 yards back, and within 3 plays, we ended up scoring a touchdown. And we haven't scored all day. And that's not to knock anybody else, but that was just an interesting story, because I'm like, man, I came to change the offense. And I told my teammates, the older guys, they asked me, they said, they put me to a side after that. Actually, the star receiver pulled me to a side after that and was like, "Hey, why did you come here?" And I told him, I said, "Hey, I come to change the offense." And him and another veteran player kind of laughed at me, and it was like, they was like, he got you too, and I said, what you talking about? I'm coming to change the offense. And they just knew I was a young, naive, freshman, thinking that, hey, I'm different than you. I'm, a part of it. Maybe I'm like, no, I'm better than the guys who they recruited before, and they really genuinely want to change. Well, these guys have been here for 4 to 5 years, and they know what the culture was like, and they kind of told me then that that's not going to happen. And so I was kind of out to prove them wrong. And in reality, they was kind of looking out for me. So I went back to them years later and like, hey, man, I remember what you said, and you were right.
So do you think that the coaches were just lying to you straight up in the recruiting process, or do you think that they were telling you things? Like, I think, in my opinion, what coaches typically do is they say something vague enough that you will interpret it in the best possible way for yourself, but they're kind of protecting themselves in a way that it's like, there's not really lying to you. They're just saying it in an ambiguous way that allows you to believe what you want to believe.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they were lying to me. I would say that probably I was interpreting it as, hey, when you make a general statement that we don't have the personnel to do that, you're the guy that can open up our offense. We genuinely want to open up the offense more. You kind of put yourself in those shoes and say, hey, I can open up the offense. My skill sets will allow Georgia Tech or any other school to be a better program. And you kind of place yourself there and you see the odds like, hey, the odds look really good for me to go in and play right away. It looks good for me to go in and do some new things, some exciting things. Now, granted, Georgia Tech did open it up a little bit. We one of the things that we never did, and believe it or not, we in 2019, but they never really went shotgun. Well, when I went there, we began to do some shotgun stuff, which was huge. That was huge for me, and that was a huge step towards the right direction. So I guess in a way, that could have been their way of opening up the offense. And for me, though, that wasn't enough. It was kind of like, okay, we're in shotgun, but we're still running the ball. Let's air it out a little bit more. But then you realize that you don't have the personnel for that. You realize that that's not our DNA. And that's why I encourage players. Again, I encourage players to go to the best situation on the field that's best for you. Don't get caught up into the emotions. Don't get caught up even into the coach saying you're the guy. And I've learned that even in real life. There will be a lot of jobs that come to you and say, hey, we can't have success without you. You have to take this job. Well, if that job is causing you to not be around your family, if that job is causing you stress more than it's causing you, happiness, if that job is just a money sign, then I'm telling you, it's not worth it. And the same thing in recruiting. You can get caught up into all the other things like, hey, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, or I'm here, and blah blah blah. They're gonna put my billboard. That was big for me. They told me, hey, you're gonna have your billboard in the middle of Atlanta. We're gonna have a face, So as a young guy, that stuff excites you, and I think I fell for it. And I realize now, if I have the opportunity to encourage anybody, I would say hey, don't allow those things that don't matter. Don't allow them to weigh in your decision. Stick to the field. Stick to the schemes. Like you asked me. Yes, I watched Georgia Tech games, but I thought that I was going to go there to change it. So,
yeah, well, that's I think going back to some of your original advice is that you're not as good as you think that you are when you're coming out of high school, and even for you, who was legitimately pretty good, you were number one player in the state, like you said, and but even as good as you were, you still overestimated, what you thought that your impact would be and how much you could change people and. And there are rare cases where I'm sure that you can, but in most cases you can't, right?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, you have experts at the college level, and you're coming in as a young high school kid. Most likely, you're not gonna you're not going to convince somebody to change what they're doing for you. So.
Yeah. Well, so you did transfer, and then I don't know if you answered the question if it felt like it was your decision or if it felt like it was the
Oh
coach's
yeah.
decision.
Yeah, no, I felt like it was completely my decision. Actually, I don't think that anybody really expected. It's not normal for a starting quarterback to transfer, especially a starting quarterback anywhere, but especially in the ACC. That just doesn't happen. But for me, like I said, I realized that it was more important to me. I came to the decision where I asked myself that would I rather, in terms of my NFL career, I knew that my NFL chances were slim if I stayed at Georgia Tech as a quarterback. And I asked myself, would I rather go down as a Georgia Tech legend, or having a great career at Georgia Tech as a starting quarterback and then end it there, or would I rather transfer somewhere else and give myself an opportunity, a shot to make it to the NFL? And ultimately, what I decided was I'd rather go somewhere to give myself a shot at my dream, and the dream was the NFL. And that's what made me leave once I, had a real conversation with myself, and obviously through a lot of prayer, I realized that it was more important for me to give myself a shot than to, you know, stay somewhere that I knew I wasn't going to have a shot at all.
Yeah. So then you went to James Madison. Did you open your recruiting back up? Was it like right back to like it was in high school where you were getting recruited
Yeah.
by all over, or did you just pick them right away?
Yeah, no, it was like high school all over. I had no idea where I was going to go when I left Georgia Tech. I just knew that I wanted to go to a system that fit my skill sets and would allow my full talents to be exposed. So for me, I did not know exactly where I was going to go. James Madison came on the scene, obviously, when it was public that I was transferring. And they reached out to me. They had a coach that actually I connected with during the recruiting process in high school. He was now the head coach at James Madison for like a week. He just took the job and he saw that I was leaving. He was at Ohio State, and then he took the head coaching job at James Madison. And it was just cool how those past connections and in recruiting, you never know who you might need one day. I've always kept in contact with people that have offered me a scholarship. Duke University is a great example. Coach Cutcliffe and I have a great relationship. I played against him for 3 years. But man, after the games, we would be looking for it. We would not. I remember just a special moment of me playing in Durham, where Duke was. Coach Cutcliffe would not leave the field until he saw me, and we were kind of looking for each other. And that's just, he's a genuine coach. Not every coach is going to be like that. I will say that. Most coaches probably be like, "Hey, forget you. You didn't come to our school. I don't want anything to do with you." But when you have good people, you make sure you stay connected, even if you don't ultimately choose to be with them, whether it's in the real world or whether it's in football. You never know when those relationships may come back. And now, being in athletics, I have the opportunity now to still reach back out to these coaches 10 years later, maybe for potential jobs or recommendations. So, yeah, I chose James Madison after about a 3-week process. And I ended up taking an official visit to JMU, and I took 2 official visits. I took one to Towson University. I knew that I had to go FCS route. Now I had some other Division 1A schools interested, but I knew that I had to go to D1AA route because I would have had to sit out a year, and I knew that wouldn't have been good for my career because I would have been playing 1 year instead of 2 years that I did.
Yeah, if you hadn't already redshirted, maybe it would have been more practical. You could have gone, transferred, and used that as a redshirt year. But with the redshirt already burned, I think that you were pretty much didn't make any sense to go to FBS.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so you probably know the details of this better than I do. I was coaching at Fordham at the time when you were at JMU, and I just remember every week it felt like JMU was scoring 75 points and you were like the leader of the pack, and you were just too good out there. You were so good that when I became the head coach of the Australian team, literally the first name I circled at quarterback was yours, and it was like, how do I get in contact with you? I contacted every coach that I thought that I knew that might know you to just get your phone number and try to get a hold of you. So why don't you tell people about your time at JMU, on the field, and the success you had there?
Yeah, best decision. One of the best decisions of my life, and certainly it was an just amazing atmosphere. The fans are great. My teammates were great. The coaching was great. JMU would probably be D1A very soon. Um, they operate at a high level, almost like an Alabama of FCS, and it was really cool to be able to transfer from the ACC. Now, I got this question a lot. What's the difference between the ACC, D1A compared to D1AA? And honestly, I couldn't really pinpoint a difference. At the end of the day, football is football, and you have a man against you, you're going against a man that you have to beat. And keep it simple. That's what it is. And now, obviously, I have experiences of playing like teams like Miami. Miami was exceptionally fast. Like that's just the U, right? Now, every team wasn't like a Miami. Now I'm in the ACC, and you probably didn't see speed like Miami in FCS, but at JMU we had an amazing. I had amazing 2 year stint there, where set all types of records. Became the only quarterback in Division I history to ever rush and pass for over 270 yards in one game. I'm not sure if that still holds up today. Maybe Lamar Jackson did it. I'm not even sure. But, we had college game day come to JMU. Now, that's unheard of. College game day going to a small school, like, man, that's crazy. And they quoted that James Madison, they've been all over the world, Alabama, LSU, and Desmond Howard quoted that JMU was the best place that they ever did college game day. So that just tells you a little bit about the environment, and that also tells to the young listeners, don't choose the place because it has popularity or because you think that that you're going to be the star on campus or whatever. Man, these small schools have just as much as energy and excitement and love for the game as well. At the end of the day, it comes down to what you do on the field. And when you have success on the field, all that other stuff will come. The accolades, the scholarships, the fan support, everything else will come once you take care of business on the field. So we took care of business on the field. We were winning a lot of games, and ended up being 2-time All-American Player of the Year and Best Player in Virginia award. And it was a really cool time at JMU.
Now, I don't know this, but did you win the Walter Payton Award?
No, so my senior year, we were 7-0 going into the 8th game of the year, and I was the number one candidate to win the Walter Payton Award. And then I got injured, so my career ended in injury. I would like to think that I would have won the Walter Payton Award. My stats at the 7th week were like, it was like a big gap. And I say that humbly, but we had a lot of success at JMU, and I was having a great senior year. But unfortunately, I didn't win the Walter Payton Award, and I would like to say due to injury.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I now you're mentioning it, it's ringing a bell for me that I do remember that. But it was like video game numbers from what I remember.
Yeah, it was, and that wasn't planned, but I think from taking my experiences from Georgia Tech and learning a lot about the run game certainly helped me to become a better facilitator of the offense at JMU, and then also knowing that this was my last opportunity to play college football, I wanted to give everything that I had on the field, and we had a really good team. Offensive line was great. I had some really talented playmakers out at wide receiver, so they made my job easy.
So what do you think is the thing about you that made you so successful?
I think it's my just my zeal. My will to just compete and my will to just win. At quarterback, you have to find a way when there's no way. When the pocket is collapsing, when there's nobody open, you have to find a way. I think using my athleticism to play quarterback, not being an athlete, there's a difference. I wasn't an athlete playing quarterback, but I used my athleticism to be a quarterback. I was an athlete at quarterback, but I wasn't a quarterback that was just athletic, I guess. If that makes sense. I certainly was able to use my athletic ability uh, to keep the defense on their toes. I think it was one of those things where defense, if you try to double team our receivers, then that is going to take off. If you try to just sit still and hold, then I'm going to throw it over your head. So I think that was one of the things coming in that a lot of teams took for granted. They didn't think that my passing skills were up to par simply because I was considered a triple option quarterback. And I just remember a lot of games where coaches would say, yeah, we're going to blitz them. We're going to get them flustered. We're going to do all these different things. Well, when they did, it made it so much easier for me because, hey, my philosophy is I'm going to one of my guys. I'm going to pick and stick, and I'm going to have a guy who I go after. So at quarterback, I always believe that when it's man-to-man situation, that my receivers are going to win. So that made it easier for me because I would sit in the pocket and take the hit, knowing that it was going to be a completed pass.
Yeah, well, I think I doubt that they were necessarily underestimating you. I think it's probably more likely that they were just taking the chance on the only way that they knew how. There were no good options. When you're up against when your defensive coordinator up against a good athletic quarterback, your options are pretty limited. And I think for a lot of coordinators, the only choice is to try to blitz and make you uncomfortable and hit you with the things that you can't see. Because that's the only chance they have. If you see it, then you got a way to beat it. But if you can't see it, then maybe you won't. And I think that's probably the shot they were taking.
Yeah.
Well, great. So what are you doing to stay involved in football today? I mean, you're a few years out of school.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, I have served in team chaplain role and character coaching roles, and been involved at a few universities where I've been learning and growing, but also where I've been able to make an impact in the game. I also, after graduating, I told you guys I ended with an injury, which was very tough for me because I was on par to potentially be drafted and at least picked up in the NFL. I was the same year as Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott. So those guys are very similar to what my skill sets are. And I remember it was Carson Wentz and I who was both leaders of the FCS coming out my senior year. And he actually suffered an injury his senior year as well, but he suffered his early on where he came back and finished strong, where I started strong and wasn't able to finish. So, it was one of those things that was very tough for me. At first, I would like to touch a little bit on just the mental health. It was very depressing for me at one point to, not be playing football, to end it like it did. So I would just say take care of yourself. Make sure that you have mentors that you can talk to. Go see a counselor. Do whatever you need to do because obviously that transition from football can be tough, especially if you are like me and you've been playing since you were 5 years old. So that was a tough time. I really didn't watch sports for a whole 2 years after that. I don't think I really watched a football game 2 years after me graduating because it was just too emotional for me, really, to just be involved. But I did ended up, with that all being said, I did end up going to rookie minicamp with the New York Giants. Now I was limping like crazy. I wasn't ready, but hey, I tried to do whatever I had to do to make an NFL roster. Didn't end up making it. Went to Canada for a little bit. Played for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Still felt like I wasn't the player that I was once before because of the injury. Had some other opportunities. I think you mentioned the Australian League in Australia, the NGL League that I was hoping to play in, but that didn't end up coming to fruition. And have always been around the game. I ended up coaching high school one year at my high school at Hillside High School. And then, like I said, I got back into college sports where I did a lot of training in Georgia Tech at Kennesaw State at all these different universities in Atlanta, and mentors from Georgia Tech, and then here in Indiana. And now, believe it or not, hopefully you guys catch this podcast and potentially will catch me playing football again. I never stopped working out. I never stopped training. It's been 3 years since I last stepped on the field, but I got an opportunity to play in this football league called Your Call Football, and it was a league that was only a 5-week league, only 2 teams, but a really cool gig. You got to go to Jacksonville, Florida, and play at the Jacksonville Jaguars facility. And that league took place this year in February and March, and it was really fun. It was fun to the point where actually 90% of the roster for both teams were guys who played in the NFL or the CFL, and so the talent was great. They had this new technology where it was like Madden in real life. The fans got to call the plays. So if you guys haven't heard about it, go check it out. It's called Your Call Football. And they have this app where fans get to call the plays, kind of like Madden, and the coaching suggestion. You pick one play. Well, fans got to choose our plays, and they needed players to play in it. So I signed up to play in it. Actually, they called me, and I said, heck yeah, I would love to play. And it turned out I felt like that player that I was before, but even better. I felt even better, and I knew at some point one day my career has always, I wanted to always have an opportunity. So my encouragement, whether you're in high school or whether you're not playing right now, or whether you just graduated college, wherever you are, one of the things that my mentor has taught me is, he always say this quote, and that is, "Win is none of your business." So he always said that. I didn't understand what he was meant by that, but he always just said, "Win is none of your business. You just better be ready and prepared for when that opportunity does come." So if you worry about when that scholarship offer is going to come, if you worry about when that next opportunity is going to come, then you're never going to take steps to get better. So win is none of your business. Your business is to get better every day, and just keep staying motivated.
And you mentioned mentoring, you mentioned scholarships. You're doing some of both of those these days, right? You're doing mentoring and you said you started a scholarship, right?
Yeah. So all in was our motto from my high school in 2010. Our motto was all in, 16-0 state champs, and that was our motto from the very beginning of the year. And at the end of the year, we were all in, 16-0 state champs, and that's one of those things that has stuck with me. It's very hard to go undefeated no matter what level you're on. And but when you're all in and committed to each other and for each other, you can make special things happen. So All In Foundation is something that me and my best friend Meyer Craw started. He ended up getting a scholarship offer to go to the Naval Academy. While obviously we just talked about, I went to Georgia Tech, and I remember back in our first year in college, we called each other and said, "Hey man, what can we do to continue to keep the all-in motto alive?" And we wanted to impact the community. We also wanted to give back. And we also wanted to inspire those who were in Durham and in our community. And we decided to come up with the all-in scholarship where we raised money for an athlete that was a key part of our success on the high school level, but just barely or just didn't get a scholarship offer for whatever reason, whether he was too short, whether he wasn't fast enough, or for whatever reason. But we feel as though 90% of the team are guys that you absolutely need on the team in order to have success. But for whatever reason, they don't get offered a scholarship. And we wanted to keep encouraging the guys that don't get the scholarship to keep pursuing your academics, keep pursuing getting better on the field. We see you. The colleges may not come and offer you a scholarship, but we notice and we see you. And that's where our scholarship kind of started from. And we also have developed to doing like an alumni event and doing kids camps, all in kids camps. And then now, if anybody on here ever want to get in contact with me, I use this online platform to mentor high school athletes and or high school and middle school actually. And if you ever want to sign up or whatever, just you can contact me at vadlee.org. And that's something that I love to do. I love to give back in ways from my experiences, but also just to encourage people to get better. We talked a little bit about mental health. We talked a little bit about the recruiting process. So we talk about all of that stuff in one-on-ones. Right now we have about over 10 college quarterbacks actually that are online right now. Virginia Tech, Ole Miss, North Carolina Central University. We got a lot of guys that are online with us, and we have a good time on there.
Well, cool. So you said the best way for athletes to find out more about the all-in stuff and you is to go to vadlee.org.
Yep, vadlee.org, and then my email is also vadlee@yahoo.com. So yeah, you can contact me, reach out to me. I would love to assist in any way and love to give some advice. I also love if you feel like you're missing out on a mentor or somebody to just talk to about these things. So there's nobody better to do it than the guy who's been in those shoes. So
that's awesome. I mean, you're a really good dude. So getting a chance to talk to you would I think be awesome for any athlete to better themselves. Before we go, what advice would you give, as like a parting words to, high school athlete going through the recruiting process or wanting to get recruited in high school and, play college football? What would you tell them?
I have the beginning of the year, I always come up with like different mottos. And one year was be great. Next year was unstoppable. And, 1 year it was extraordinary, which was last year. But this year, my motto this year is press on. And I feel that because I feel that so heavily because a lot of people get stuck in their tracks when things don't go as planned or things don't go as well as they thought it would. But if you continue to press on, you will reach the prize. You will get to where you're trying to go. It might look different than how you originally planned it, but God can work all things out for the better and for the good of your story. And you're gonna look back one day and realize that, man, if I would have stopped, I never would have been here. So my encouragement is to press on, keep going, don't quit, and also win is none of your business. And keep pressing on.
All right, Vad. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was great. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This was fun. Thank you.
Well, what really came through for me in that one is Vad and his love of helping people and his love of the game of football. And so he just brings those two things together in just about anything he does in his life. And I just think it's great. It honestly reminds me of some of my own passions and my own drives, much of the reason why I started Verified Athletics in the first place. So thanks for listening, and go check out the College Selector. It's going to help you, so it's worth the 5 minutes, and I'm excited to see what kind of results it will produce for you. And see you next time.